Good morning, good afternoon. Happy Friday, HubSpot Nation, LinkedIn friends. We are here for another episode of Let's Build Profoundly with our next pro, Tony Dowling. How you doing, man?
Good morning, good afternoon to people my side of the world. You can tell from my accent, everyone. I'm not US based. I'm in the UK, and I'm doing really well. We've got blue skies. It's a bit chilly, but spring is on its way finally, I think.
That's way already. Okay, I like that. I like that. I don't know what it looks like outside this week, man. It's been a wild ride since we launched last week. It's been a fun one though. It's so good to get this out, and great to be here talking with you. So much of this has been about just getting, I think you said it. How'd you say it yesterday? Good people giving good help in the HubSpot community.
It's very much driven, I think. Yeah, I think it's exactly that. It's very much driven by that, by good people who want to help people and help people do good things. That's a human fundamental, George might say. We like to help people, and that's what I love particularly about Profoundly and about the HubSpot ecosystem. Actually, not always been in it. Obviously, I've been in it for a long time, but I've not always been in it, and it is a pretty unique and a pretty special place, I think, personally.
It is. I agree. And let's talk about your place in it. What is your expertise when it comes to HubSpot, and where does that come from?
But I think it's an interesting question. Perhaps that's because it's about me. But it actually took me a while to work out what my HubSpot expertise was. I've always been a generalist. I was a salesperson back in the day. That was my first job, and I always wanted to be a manager. And back then, we used to think managers were generalists. So a manager sort of knew a little bit about a lot of things. So that's what I strove to do. So I was an okay salesperson. Obviously, I did okay, hit targets and decent money. But I discovered I was a very much better sales manager than I was a salesperson, and I was able to support people. I believed in what I found out was called something called servant leadership. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I seemed to do okay with salespeople. And then from there, I became a managing director and went into bigger and bigger businesses. And I ended up doing something called digital transformation, which I'm sure most of our crowd will have heard of. But I ended up doing it for an employer. So basically, I was put into an organization as managing director to transform the business. And that happened to me about 3 times in total over a period of about 5 or 10 years. So I learned a lot about transformation, about people, about management, about leadership, and about change. But when I decided to start my own business, HubSpot was a bit of a no-brainer. I came out of my last gig in London, exhausted, wrung out, and thought, like a lot of us do, screw it, I'm going to do it for myself. I'm fed up with making other people money. Let's make some for myself. And I naturally, I think, gravitated towards sales because that's my functional specialty. That's the thing I do: salesperson, sales manager, sales director, and a commercial managing director. And I have a natural affinity with Sales Hub. But I've done a lot of marketing as well. I was marketing the brands that I ran and marketing for clients because we used to sell marketing services to people. I was always a bit sort of torn. So sales and marketing hub were my sort of the love. So sales was a little bit further forward. And then as I got more into HubSpot, I got more into. I started becoming a generalist again. I got into customer service hub. I know content hub and commerce hub and all the hubs. But recently I started like about a year ago, 18 months ago. I started to realize there was an issue with what we were doing, and I was looking around and I realized that everybody else was suffering from the same issue. And that was the work that we were doing with HubSpot wasn't always successful. I'm going to be honest enough to say it wasn't even mostly successful. And this used to drive me mad. What are we doing wrong? What are we missing? Why is this right? We'd over deliver. I shouldn't tell you this, but we even went a year on a contract that was supposed to last for 3 months because the client just couldn't get it. And I wasn't willing to give up.
Right?
So we were doing all the things, we were building all the things, we were teaching, we were training, we used Supered for enablement. I thought we were doing a great job, but we'd go back and speak to people 3 months later. How's it going with Hubs? Oh, well, we don't really use it so much now. Or we've moved over to something else. And it really used to drive me mad. So I started to research this and I found out that this actually isn't a terribly unusual phenomenon. in a world of CRM and in a world of digital transformation. McKinsey themselves have said 70% digital transformation fails. And this was like this was the epiphany, right? This was the big moment where I thought, hang on a minute. We're not really talking about this in our ecosystem, are we? I was looking around. Everybody's talking about doing it and putting it in and such and such. And then the conversation did start to turn towards adoption as it started to become known. And I coined this term for our clients, used to say, the adoption gap. You're suffering from the adoption gap. The adoption gap being this thing that you see. You've bought HubSpot and you want to get to use it, and understandably, but there's a gap between where you are and where you want to be. So that was the start of this particular journey, and we researched. We've done a lot of work talking to clients, talking to other partners, and we ended up working with management consultants on this idea of where does this adoption gap come from. And what we realized eventually is most HubSpot implementations, most digital implementations, all CRM implementations are bottom up, as we call it, right? In the world of management, bottom up. And all that means is HubSpot admins get lumbered with all the work. Salespeople get taught to use the sales tools. Marketers go in and start shipping social through HubSpot and so on. So that's the bottom, pushing HubSpot up through the organization. But transformation, and we've known this for a long time, comes top down. In fact, the definition of transformation is a top-down motion. That's why it's so difficult to do. So we started to develop this product which was top down and bottom up at the same time. It's very, very difficult to achieve, right? And we've brought people into the organization, into our business, who were able to help us with the top down, just as we were able to provide the bottom up. And that's when I realized that's my HubSpot speciality. My HubSpot speciality is actually working with teams to adopt HubSpot. Not doing HubSpot, not building workflows, automations and all that kind of stuff, which I'm not terribly bothered about anyway, or all that interested in. I really get off when somebody picks up the tool and starts to use it. When a management team comes to us and says, man, our sales ratio is improving. Our cost of sales has stayed the same, but our revenue has improved. Or our revenue stayed the same, but our cost of sales has improved. Those are the that's the reward for me, and that's where I am now. That's what I specialize in. That's what we do as an organization, and I thrive on, is closing that adoption gap. Bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully you can see where I went from. I started working in sales, as it were, went back to sales in HubSpot, but realized actually it was the management skills that I have and the management experience I have that I can bring most to bear. Sorry, we've
Yeah,
got
and as you
a little blonde gentleman who wants to join us. You can see his tail. Sorry about that.
well, he's more than welcome. I have to imagine I don't think I was aware of the three digital transformations that you got to do. Like immediately when you said that, I was like, did you actually get to do them? Did they let you do them? So were
Yeah,
you a part of that 30% that works?
no, well, yes and no, because one was, I'm going to say, was stuck and probably still hasn't completely worked. And that's when I worked in radio, in commercial radio. It was very early days and we didn't even really know what digital transformation was, but we moved the organization onto DAB, onto digital radio. We moved the sales team into a digital product, pre-roll and post-roll and all that kind of stuff. And obviously the station's community moved to social. So nowadays, all jocks, all radio presenters, they're all on Instagram and everything else, but they were terrified of it back then, So I regard that one as a bit of a middling one, sort of learning what to do. Then I went in as transformation MD specifically for a newspaper group, and we had a fantastic transformation. We had a fully successful transformation by the numbers. So we saw revenue increase, digital revenue increase. We saw costs decrease. We saw newspaper circulation go up, and obviously we saw website traffic go up massively. So website traffic went from something like 200,000 uniques a month to 4 million uniques a month. So there was a proper, and that was a 2-year gig as a lead MD. That was a lot of work. I loved every minute of it. But then I went and worked in London on a media group. This was a combination of traditional media. There were magazines, there were radio, there was events and various other things. And the idea was to transform that into a digital operation, web-first digital operation, and that failed. So by the numbers, that failed because it ended up running out of money. So I always think I've had, like, say, about 10 years of digital transformation, one big success, one major failure, and one that was a bit in the middle where I learned the ropes.
That one is more than most.
The one
I'll
is
say.
it was huge.
I mean, were you, as you started transitioning into this mode of focusing on the adoption gap, were you looking back on those moments of where you were, because it's just so complex, and just for context, I was brought in as well twice to lead digital transformation from marketing, which never works, by the way. And yeah, and you get all the buy-in, you get new budgets, you get like a team of people, and then you just run into, in that case, it's the adoption of all the process change and all the other things like making videos, stuff like that. So I imagine you're able to draw something from that experience to help you get, to where you are in terms of how you deliver HubSpot.
I think so, and I think that this is why we have a unique point of view in the HubSpot world, because I don't regard myself as a HubSpot geek. I'm a HubSpot fanboy. I've used HubSpot for as long as I can remember in my teams as the CRM, and I've always fettled with it and messed around. Sorry, and I'm gonna have to move him again. I think one sec. Sorry, the viewer. One sec.
Good. It's been a super interesting journey with Tony as we've been learning.
He's an old man. He needs help. I'm really sorry. I'm
Yeah.
really sorry.
Well, he's
So,
got a good dad.
well, so I never really got so deep into it. I think it's an offshoot of being a manager where you wanted to know enough about everything to be dangerous, but you have to sort of keep this general perspective. And what I realized was we were all, myself included, in our HubSpot partner, we were all trying to push transformation up. Like you said, from marketing, it's a typical journey for a business. Okay, marketing, you wanted it, you're in charge of it. Or, the poor old admins, my God, we'll appoint some champions. That'll be fine. And the bit that was always missing was this, I'm going to call it management buy-in. It's a bit more sophisticated than that, a bit more nuanced than that. Because it's not buy-in in so much that most management go, yeah, that's a good idea, let's do that. And they sign off on the paperwork. It's buy-in from the perspective of understanding how to pull HubSpot or anything else through the organization. In other words, how to transform, how to push HubSpot down and then pull it along and through the organization. It's off again. And that's when I started to think. I think we got an opportunity here because I'm surrounded by HubSpot experts, but I'm a very experienced senior manager. And more, not a HubSpot manager, not a RevOps manager, not a sales manager for sure, but an MD. I've run teams of people. I've run HR functions, finance functions, sales functions, marketing functions, ops functions, and so on and so on. Reported to boards and talked to the chief execs and worked for a VC and a startup and, all the thing, all this experience. So I got, I think, relatively unique perspective on HubSpot. I tend to look at it as the MD of an organization would look at it. And I know if they don't get it, they sign off on it and then forget about it. And I also know that that's when it falls apart. That's what creates the adoption gap in the first place. And I always give the same example, Chris. I say, if your MD or sales director or even sales manager is saying to you at the end of the week, send me your numbers on a spreadsheet, then you have an adoption gap. The end.
Indeed. Find all the sheets.
Yeah.
That's one of the easiest ways to help people, it's because I remember, like, it's so easy to just get in there and do stuff and think you're solving, and then you're just going to hand it over and people are going to use it. And I like how you differentiated that difference of buy-in, like the difference between buy-in, okay, here's the money, go do it, and I understand and I will help you drive it because I, as the leader, need to, because I'm the only one that can. Yeah, that resonates hard.
This is where our MCS comes in, right? So we use a term, it's a management term, management control system, right? And it's a bit like a dashboard, but it's more than a dashboard. And the place you start with this is when you're looking at the organization, you basically say to them, how are you going to get to where you want to get to? Now, let's set aside for a second that a lot of them don't know. A lot of them don't know how they're going to get where they want to be. A lot of them don't even know where they are. Right? So just set that aside for a minute, right? But assuming the organization knows what it wants to do, in other words, it knows what its strategy is, it'll be able to create a North Star around that strategy, right? It'll be able to create a system to guide itself through. And that system we usually refer to as a management control system. Not everybody calls it that. People will call it different things. But management control systems, best practice, will exhibit certain features, right? And one of the things I mentioned earlier, these ratios could be part of your management control system. So if the management of the business, the leadership of the business know how they're going to drive that business forward, they should be able to produce this MCS. If they produce the MCS, then we should be able to replicate that into HubSpot, at least in part, if not in full. We should be able to build dashboards around the MCS. We should be able to put goals in the system. We should be able to teach sales managers how to run pipeline reviews. We should be able to show reps how to do target accounts. Should be able to show marketers how to use the campaign tool and the other analytics, build custom reports, journey, all the things, right? We should be able to do that. But it's only valuable when the business knows what it is it wants to do. If it knows what it wants to do, then HubSpot, in effect, will become the underpinnings, the foundation, the scaffolding for the whole business. And you run the business through HubSpot. That's how you close the adoption gap. So that was the point of view that I came up with, thinking to myself, it's not about empowering people so much. It's not about training everybody so much. Those things are obviously important. But it's about management actually picking the thing up and using it to run the business. Because if they don't, it just doesn't get adopted. It's just as black and white, as simple as that.
It really is.
The MCS
It really
is the
is.
strategy in a sense. It's the operational strategy, if you want to call it that. It's the hows. And that's the critical bit, the missing bit.
Couldn't agree more. And it's been fun to watch that grow over the last year as we've been doing shows together. And we both get excited about, educating and figuring this out. So I've never even taken the chance to ask what I'm about to ask outside of HubSpot. Who is Tony Dowling?
Well, I don't know. There is anybody outside of HubSpot. No, of course. So a long time ago, I'm quite old, much older than I look. A long time ago, I realized that I was going to fall over. My world was going to come crashing down because I was a salesperson who worked like everybody else too hard. I was an MD that worked too hard, and I wasn't able to switch off until I could, right? I had to learn to switch off. I had to learn to do my thing. And it's bigger than just making time for yourself or anything. It's about compartmentalization. I never say that word. Did I say that right? It's about having a segment, having a business unit in your brain, having database distance from all the business work and all the personal work, right? So I've managed to develop the knack of switching off. So Friday, 6:00, usually, not all the time. I mean, it sounds great, but it doesn't happen all the time. But I switch off work and I go into me, as you say. So I spend my time with my kids, driving my boys around. They're 19, twins. I spend all Saturday with Alex and usually all Sunday with Jake. They take it in turns because they're twins. Obviously don't want to be together. I ride a bike. I ride a bike for purely my own time, and clearly not a push bike. Just need a beard like yours, and I'll be set.
There you go.
And I'm into personal development, right? I'm into people and people development. I read, or I listen a lot these days. I'm very much an audible thing. I think a lot about philosophy, about why we're here, what we're for. My son's doing politics and philosophy in university, which is fab for me. So I'm learning all this stuff secondhand.
There'll be some deep conversations.
Yeah, it's amazing. We're on a particularly rich vein of politics at the moment, what with everything going on in the world. So that's really interesting. But yeah, I'm just they're just a family guy. I think just a normal, typical family person. And then Monday comes again, switch over to work, and then I'm a HubSpotter and an adoption person and what have you.
I think there's a rule somewhere that at some point you're supposed to tell me about a football team or a rugby team or something like that you follow. None of that?
I used to play sport. I never watched much sport, but as I've got older, I've started to support our local football team because I moved away when I was working in London. It was like the thing that I logged onto that was from home. and I've sort of supported Swansea City ever since. The Swans. Nobody will ever have heard of them. Don't worry. We're a championship, mid-table championship side. Not doing terribly well. We did fly high for 7 seasons in the Premier League, but we're we're down a league from there. So I've got a sports team, and obviously, like all Welsh people, come January at the Six Nations starts, 𝗟𝗲𝗁, as we call it in Wales, 𝗟𝗲𝗁, the Six Nations, which is the big rugby tournament. So England versus France, Wales, Ireland, Scotland, and Italy. And if you're Welsh, you don't really care about any of the results apart from the result against England. So as we say, as long as we beat the English, we don't care.
How's it looking this year?
Terrible. We're awful.
Okay.
We haven't won a game for 12 games. We've been a year without a win. It could be messy.
No. Okay. Well, best of luck to
Thank
the
you very
team
much.
there. Thank you for sharing. We've got an event coming up on March 6th, and been getting the take of everybody who's on the show. You get to be just an attendee that gets to soak in, all the knowledge. So we've got some tracks, and I'm curious if any of them stick out to you as what you're excited to hear about. We've got HubSpot admin. We've got integration development, web development, AI and Breeze, marketing, founder, and solopreneur.
There's a few that immediately tickle my fancy. Like a lot of people, I'm big time into AI myself at the minute, and I'm in it personally, I should say. I'm trying to learn about it and trying to keep up and so on. But the one that probably resonates the most for me will be the admin, because I love HubSpot admins. They have such a difficult job, and the more I know about them and the way they do their job, the more I can help them, I think. So that'll be the one I'll probably keep most of an eye out. Even though I'm a founder, a solopreneur, whatever you want to call it, an AI.
Well, you already know everything you need to know.
I know everything. I know
those
all that
topics,
stuff.
right?
Yeah. But the admins are always great, and I love learning little tricks, little shortcuts, little hacks that people have. Like you said earlier about finding something that you didn't know HubSpot did. Wow, that's brilliant! And then you rush off, crazy excited to tell everybody. Yeah, that'll be my bag, I think.
Yeah. There's actually a great panel right before the tracks too that George is leading about what is a HubSpot admin, and got some good people. 𝗔𝗍𝗁𝘁, Matt Bolian, Sarah Lane Hahn, and 𝗟𝗲𝗁𝘁 are going to discuss that. And knowing who they are, I imagine it's going to be a pretty spicy conversation about how we define a HubSpot admin. So we're really excited for that panel as well. It's going to be a fun event, man. And thanks so much for taking the time today to share a little bit about your story. And you mentioned before the show that we've got some exciting developments coming our way from your camp.
Absolutely.
So we'll be following along.
Thank you.
To see what happens next.
Thank you for your help with that, Chris. As people may know, we talk every week about this stuff, and it's been a big part of the development of what is Real Inbound and what Real Inbound will become.
Yeah, there we go. That show, let's build HubSpot adoption. We just go right at it with these titles. There's no special tricks that we're trying to, no 10 ways to adopt HubSpot, right? It's just we're building adoption on that show, and it's been really fun. And I appreciate you joining us on the Profoundly platform as well, man.
Thanks for having me. It's an absolute blast. Looking forward to seeing where it goes.
Yes, sir. So until next time, everybody have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.